2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Don't Do That, the podcast where we talk about what not to do at work and beyond.
As equity practitioners, we found ourselves often thinking that folks should stop doing things before they start doing things. Hence the title of our podcast, Don't Do That. I'm Ani. I'm an equity coach, organizational equity strategist, and educator with a deep curiosity for how to improve systems and a commitment to lift others as I continue to learn and grow.
I'm Karen, and I've worked in social justice for over a decade. I'm a consultant, coach, and thought partner. My purpose is to make community matter. I do that by helping leaders create better work environments. Adi and I met as consultants and quickly became friends. Collectively, we have over 25 years of experience navigating equity, inclusion, and justice in the workplace. Don't Do That is a platform to tell stories about making mistakes at work and how to fix them. The views on this podcast are our own. We do not speak on behalf of our organizations or the communities we mention.
Welcome, listeners. Today on Don't Do That, we are talking about executive coaching. So is it me, or is everyone suddenly offering expert advice about your career between the internet gurus, the YouTube channels, and podcasts, ourselves included? There's a lot of free advice out there. So why would someone actually pay for an executive coach? Coaching used to be something mostly reserved for CEOs navigating big decisions, but now you can see everyone from new managers to senior leaders working with coaches. Some people swear by it. Other people think it's basically paying someone to listen to your problems. So today we are unpacking it, what exactly coaching is, why it's becoming more common, and whether or not it's genuinely valuable or maybe it's just good marketing. So let's get into it. I wanted to start by sort of saying what exactly executive coaching should be, best case scenario. As I mentioned earlier, executive coaching has moved from exclusively for executive leaders. So think about president, CEO, folks who are in the C-suite. And now it's a growing part of just generally professional development as workplaces really become more complex and are navigating really tough problems, right? At its core, executive coaching, when done well, is a structured partnership focused on helping leaders think more clearly, strengthen skills, and improve performance. It's not really about advice giving. It's having someone help you think about solving problems in different ways. It's not therapy. It's not mentoring. It is future focused. It relies on sort of questioning and reflections to help folks find their own solutions. A couple of things before we get into our conversation. One, the coaching industry is now worth over $5 billion globally, US dollars globally, and growing quickly. So again, organizations think about executive coaching as leadership development. And a lot of individuals are seeking coaching on their own, just a part of their own career development as well. Organizations are investing in this because, as I said, things are becoming more complex in our world. So whether it's navigating hybrid or remote working places, thinking about introducing AI into the workplace, things are just so fast moving that it is helpful to have someone to help you think through how to navigate some of those things. And the last thing I want to note is for many leaders, it's hard to have honest feedback loops within your organization. So if you're thinking about the folks who work with you and work for you, it is rare that you will get someone who is willing to be super transparent because of the nature and dynamic of the relationships. It is quite risky often for folks to do that. So the benefit of having a coach is that you can find that space for candid reflection and for you to feel challenged directly. So with that, Karen, you've had many years of working with CEOs and leaders in organizations, helping them to think through problems. So I'd love to hear from you. What role have you seen coaching play in leadership? And how do you know when someone sort of genuinely needs a coach, or when they're sort of looking for someone to just like vent to or validate some bad ideas?
There, that's very true. Sometimes folks are just looking for validation. I actually have experience with coaching both as someone that has had a coach myself on two different occasions, and then to your earlier point, have coached leaders and CEOs um, myself. And I think for me, a good marker for if coaching can be helpful is thinking about, like, is there um, a gap in terms of your own learning or development that you feel like a coach could be really helpful for. So in the coaching that I provided, it was often from an equity and inclusion lens where leaders just needed the space to be able to work out some dynamics around equity and inclusion and wanted, my perspective and expertise there. I also think that for a lot of leaders in traditional leadership models, leaders are supposed to be like stoic. You're supposed to be the one that has all of the answers. And to your point, it can be challenging as a leader to work through things amongst your team, because I think that it can diminish your own credibility sometime. And I think that coaching provides a space for leaders in real time to be able to work through challenges and problems and to get a second opinion about things that otherwise, would be difficult or impossible to do amongst their own, direct reports or leadership teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think in my experience, similar to any sort of like developmental process, you have to be the things that sort of stand out to me as like green flags are like someone who is clearly self motivated. They're already asking themselves sort of like tough questions and just need like a partner to sort of navigate that with. Um, the other thing that makes sense as like a green flag for me is thinking about um, folks who are seeking that sort of space when it's not a moment of crisis, right? To say like, oh, I want to be proactive and, I anticipate there will be some challenges. So I can always tell that they're not looking for like, oh, I need an answer to this tough thing. If it's just like nothing's happening, but I just feel like I want to sort of prepare myself or think through or anticipate some of the challenges either in the organization or for themselves. So for sure. Um, so if those are some like green flags, what are some like red flags from your perspective on how you know when something isn't a good fit, either from your perspective as like looking at a coach, or like from a coach sort of looking at a client?
Yeah, I would say that if I'm being coached, then a red flag would be a coach not being prepared or it feeling like a conversation amongst friends. Like that's not
Mm.
that's not what coaching is. um, to your point earlier, there should be, while coaching is a conversation, it is very pointed at helping your client get answers to whatever challenges they're presenting. And so it's a very curious process, right? There's a lot of inquiry that happens in coaching conversation. So if it feels like you're just shooting the shit with like your coach, then maybe that, maybe that's a red flag to look into. The other red flag I would say is sometimes I think organizations can use coaching as a cover, right, to other like development challenges of like, let's just get this person a coach as a way to like either bypass another intervention that actually needs to happen. It's like, okay, this person actually doesn't need coaching. Maybe they need to not be with the organization anymore.
Yeah. Or maybe there need to be like other policies created or levels, like maybe this person doesn't need to manage people or, that type of thing. No, I agree with that. I think a red flag for me is like the coach is talking too much. So that can
Mhm.
either be that the client doesn't want to be there, right? So they're not saying much like from the perspective of like being the coach. And then
Yeah.
if you are the client, if the coach is like saying a whole bunch of stuff and you haven't gotten a word in edge, otherwise, then
Yeah,
I would say red flag for sure.
I agree.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I also don't like coaches who do a lot of like teaching. For me, it really should be like a self-led process. Like you should be doing a ton of listening and I should be going like according to where I desire to go. But yeah, I've definitely seen coaches do a lot of like, oh, you should do it, blah, blah, blah. When I was in your same exact place, here's what I did.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're not me, so
And yeah,
not helpful.
I agree. I do think it is helpful for like if folks have never done coaching before to explain at the point that you did earlier, right? Of like what coaching is and what it is not. And then as a coach, if you have particular like nuances or specialties within your practice to share that with your client so that they're aware of like this is how this will work, our process will work. But to your point, for you to just be sharing, you know, experiences or being able to recall your heyday, like that's not really.
So so if I'm someone who is thinking about getting an executive coach, what is like one pitfall I should be aware of? What's like one mistake that folks might make when they're working with a coach?
I would underscore the point that you made earlier that coaching is not therapy. Like for me, therapy is more backwards looking in terms of being able to dive deeply into your past, what experiences you may have that are like informing your behavior in the future or in the current day. And coaching is not really meant to do that. It is meant to be forward focused and to really help the client unearth what answers are already kind of inside of them, but using the coaching process to uncover what that means for you as the client.
Yeah. Yeah, I would add to that that not everyone needs a coach, right? If you're someone who can dig into the books and you're doing all the self-development techniques and you are visioning and you have a plan and you have like a peer group where you connect with folks and you're often reflecting and feel challenged. I have also seen folks who are just like highly ambitious and are like, yeah, the other thing I need to add is like a coach. It's like, no, you should be thoughtful about like what you have access to. And if you feel like having that sort of like weekly session where you can have someone hold you accountable. I've seen people who have really benefited from it because they don't have access to that in their like peer networks, or if they are a really busy entrepreneur, they've just started like a company or something like that. They don't have time to sort of like connect in peer groups to have the scheduled time like once every 2 weeks is super helpful. Folks who are like in a transitional period and maybe have like grown beyond their like peers or something like that. So just making sure that it is like the right time for you, I think for sure.
Yeah. I would underscore the transitional period. That's actually one of the times that I proactively sought out a coach is when I was taking on my first leadership role. And I knew that it would be um, a moment where like I would be getting into a lot of different things and experiencing some things professionally that I had not before. So I knew that I wanted a coach to be able to, work through whatever came up in my transition into leadership.
Yeah. The other thing that just came up, because I think you mentioned something about like the equity coaching that you've done before, is I think it's also important in the same way that you would with like a mentor or a therapist, sort of think about like the cultural fit with a coach as well. I do think even with the sort of probing and questioning, it is helpful to have someone who understands sort of like cultural nuances, um, and can help you sort of think through cultural nuances and how that shows up in like your own leadership.
Yeah.
So I would say that is like important to think about too.
Yeah. One red flag that I just also thought about is if someone is seeking a coach as a way to like fix other people, right? It's like
Mhm.
I'm getting this critical feedback from, let's say, my direct supervisors, I mean, my direct reports, and I want my coach to help me to figure out how to fix them. And it's like, that's not really what coaching for. It's not meant to help you change other people. It's really meant to be an internal development process for yourself.
Right. Like, advise me on how I can shift their
And I've had leaders do that of like giving me scenarios where they are talking about like their colleagues or their employees. And it's like, okay, but my job here is not to tell you that that employee behaved incorrectly. Rather, it's to help you decide and determine how do you deal with that kind of experience, should it come up again or if it's continuing.
Right, right, exactly. Um, so how do you feel like coaching is sort of like particularly different in the workplace from like a mentor or manager, and thinking about how like so many companies are sort of like creating like a whole executive coaching function. They're offering it to employees internally throughout sort of the hierarchy in an organization. Um, yeah, how do you think coaching is maybe filling a gap that maybe used to be handled by like mentors or managers?
It's a good question. I have to admit, I haven't thought deeply about this, but I would say that when I think about mentor relationships, it is being able to learn from the experience of your mentor and them having walked like a similar career path or life path that you can like draw their wisdom from that. Whereas, and I think that you can often use mentors as like sounding boards, right? When you are facing a challenge, but I wouldn't say that's the primary function of the relationship. Whereas I think coaching to me, a primary function of a coaching and client relationship is specifically for development and solving, I think, challenges or working through challenges as a client.
Yeah, agreed. I think with I think for an organization, the value of an executive coach is it supports sort of like acculturation more than assimilation. I think like mentors and managers will sort of help you sort of think about how you can change you to be more like us, the company. Like, what can you do to sort of like blend in more? But I feel like having like an executive coach helps you sort of think about who you are, how you lead, what is your value add, and you can sort of slowly weave that into an existing culture. Um, so I think that's the value, and I think that's necessary, especially as workplaces are changing, and we want to think about best practices and really leveraging, diversity. We want people to not change who they are. We want them to feel confident to lead in exactly the ways that they are. So, yeah, I think that's one value I see.
Yeah. To that point, what do you think are some markers of success? Like, how do you know if a coaching relationship is successful or not?
So, a couple things. One, I think the person that defines the success would be the client for sure. And I would say a client that feels like empowered, not necessarily that they have all the answers, but they feel like very capable in solving challenges. I would say two, a client that is more reflective, that is sort of like broaden their aperture when they're thinking about problem solving and navigating their own career, that there are more things that they are now considering as a result of the sort of like client relationship. And I would say for an organization is just like a more thoughtful, empowered leader. So someone who is, I would say, less defensive, not really digging their heels in the same way, someone who is more open to feedback, like a growth mindset. All of those things to me are sort of markers of success.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'd
Yeah.
also say someone that is more from like an organization point of view, if a leader becomes more collaborative and proactive in like seeking input from various folks to your point of like making sure that they are broadening their aperture of
Yeah.
who their inner circle is.
Yeah. And of course more self-aware. I think what coaching does not do is sort of like change a personality, right? If I'm someone who was like conflict avoidant, coaching doesn't sort of like magically transform me to be like, oh, I love conflict and I can dig in, but it does make me more self-aware to say like, oh, I am someone who is conflict avoidant. So when conflict arises, how can I, knowing that, navigate through that? Maybe that means I need to hire more staff to help support me in that. Maybe when it does happen, I sort of like name where I'm at and then seek extra support as I'm sort of like cultivating and building that skill. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good example.
Um, so last question here, because of course we talked about this, folks always feel like, oh, there's an issue happening. Let's hire some executive coach to help with this thing. What are some problems or issues that coaching cannot solve?
Yeah. The first thing that came to mind for me was from like a legal perspective. Coaching cannot fix someone who may be guilty of harassment or discrimination. Like those are things that have a very clear legal threshold and definition. And so we should not be using coaching as an intervention for those types of things.
Yes. Well, thank you for naming that. That should be obvious, but but
And sometimes it's not, you know?
don't do that, right? Don't do
No.
someone has an employee relations investigation for workplace bullying or harassment, please do not hire them an executive coach. Yes, that was the
Mhm.
explicit message there.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think generally when it's like a legal threshold or like a policy or system issue, if folks are like, oh, we lost funding and we're going to have to like riff a lot of people. And I'm like, wanting to know what to do. It's like, well, I think you need to talk to like your finance team and HR, like start internally for those types of things. Like coaching is really about self-development. And if there are like system challenges or funding challenges or finance challenges or legal challenges, you ought to talk to those experts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, awesome. Okay, well, let's get into our favorite part, the do that or
Yes.
don't do that. Karen?
Let's do it. Do I get to start?
Yes.
Okay. Do that or don't do that. Should you promote an employee knowing that they need development and could benefit from coaching, but they haven't received it yet? Do they get the promotion or not?
I mean, what are they getting promoted to? Is my question. I would say sometimes if someone's like a subject matter expert, depending on like where they need the coaching and development, I would say if this is someone who's going to be a people manager and I'm thinking they could develop um, into that, I think I generally believe you should be promoted on potential. I don't know if that's controversial, but I don't think that you have to have 100% of those skills before you are promoted. I do think there has to be a commitment to developing those skills and evidence that you can develop those skills. So I would say do that.
I,
Controversial.
I think, I mean, for me, yes, only because I feel like it's a don't do that.
Hmm.
Only because I think that a promotion is something that generally is hard to walk back from. Um, and coaching, I think, is not a guarantee, right? Like to the point we made earlier, there's a lot that has to be right. The person has to have the right posture, the right attitude, right? They have to have a commitment to development. And I think promoting someone before they've been able to demonstrate those skill sets or like had success with whatever the coaching and development is, I think is a risk. So I would say don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, the asterisk for me is they do show the potential. Like
Mhm.
maybe they need like continual development, but they have shown the potential. I guess for me is the sort of like lens that I'm considering is that sometimes people put so many barriers in front of you for a promotion, like, oh, you have to do XYZ before you get there. You have to already be doing that job before you get there. And I think we need less of that.
Mm. Yeah. I
Uh,
think I also bringing in like the equity lens of who gets promoted
right.
more for like, oh, there may be a development opportunity, but let's,
Mm,
to your point, promote this person and see what happens. Like, I think more often than not, I don't know that I've seen an experience where like women and Black women, especially, are given that leeway.
for sure. They're told you don't 100% have it. So,
Mhm.
right. Which is, that was, I mean, we're thinking about it from the same lens, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about that too. Like, yeah, I'm not taking no coaching before I get promoted. Like, just promote me.
Yeah.
But I get both of those perspectives.
Yeah.
Okay, so do that or don't do that. Provide coaching for your friends.
I would say don't do that. Um, because I think that's a blurring of the relationship between like coach and client that may not go well. And let's say your friend has a bad experience with you as a coach or vice versa. It is like, how
Fair.
is that going to work on your friendship?
Yeah,
You know? Yeah, I
fair.
would say don't do that.
I have done it.
You have.
Yeah, I have done it. But it went well. I would
Okay.
say both of us sort of had our professional like lenses on and we were able to do it. But I think you do have to create some hard boundaries around it. It's not like, oh, let's just like link up for brunch and then that'll be like our coaching session. Like, no, it has to be like super formal. Like, we're not sort of, we happen to be talking. I'm like, this is a good time for coaching. Like, no.
That's fair. I
Um,
also feel like you as a coach, knowing you, I could see how that would work for you. I think that both as a coach and a client, you probably have to have a certain level of self awareness to know if like you can handle the two roles of those relation of like in one relationship, or and you're able to compartmentalize in that way. And if
yeah,
you're not, then it's like don't even try.
right. That is fair feedback. And again, like at the core of like a coaching relationship, it is like, is this a good fit? So if
Mhm.
it's a friend or not, like if it's not a good fit, we're not doing that. So,
Yeah. Okay, my do that or don't do that. If you are in your early or mid career, should you get a coach to prepare for a promotion or a new opportunity?
hmm, I say do that. My asterisk is don't go broke doing that. So I think you can find coaches at a range of price points, and that also might sort of connect to like their skill level and ability. So I think sort of do your due diligence to sort of interview folks, find someone who is like an appropriate match based on like what you need and the price point. But for sure, I think it's tremendous value in doing that, especially at that age, because I I have found, this is not research backed, but my personal experience, I have found that folks, when they're early careers, tend to be, and even more so now, tend to be in like really echo chambers of their peers, even when they're thinking about YouTube advice. LinkedIn advice, all of that, like the algorithm in life has just created like an echo chamber. So I think it is incredibly valuable to have someone who lives outside of your network to challenge you and allow you to think about things differently, provide a different perspective, all of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's to do that for me as well. I also think a coach can be really helpful in as a client helping you to uncover what that next step looks like because sometimes there's a clear pathway depending on the organization you're in and sometimes it's not and it can be difficult to know like what does development and advancement look like for me whether it be inside of my organization or not. And so I think a coach can be helpful in helping you as a client determine that.
Perfect. Agreed. Okay. My last do that or don't do that. Having an executive coach for an extended period of time. So like 4 years.
That's a great question. Well, I will say from the coach's perspective, it's great job security. So that's great. But I think from a client perspective, I think sometimes it is good to change like who your coach is over time because different person they may have a different part of their process. Um, and so I think to your point, like if you're having a coach for the same coach for 5 to 10 years, I think you do become a part of like an echo chamber that can eventually like plateau your growth and development.
Yes. Plus, plus. As a coach, I mean, I'm thinking 6 to 12 months. Like, I'm really not, and even as a consultant, like, I just don't believe in like extended periods. It's not good for me and it's not good for the client. Like, at a certain point, I think both of us sort of plateau.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, awesome. All right. Well, any final takeaways, Karen?
Yeah, I think my takeaway is that coaching can be really helpful, especially if you are a person that is committed to your own growth and development and motivated to uncover, um, what's inside of you in terms of like your own empowerment. But I will say that coaching has its limitation. It's not, a silver bullet to solve for any and everything within an organization or for a leader.
Yeah, agreed. It's not a silver bullet. It isn't magic, but it can absolutely help not only organizations, but individuals. And it's something that a lot of folks don't get enough of, like just the space to reflect and think about like who I am as a leader. And for a lot of different reasons, right? You can layer in identity and socioeconomic status and where you're at in your career, why you might not have access to that space. So I think it's a great benefit, but obviously can't fix everything, and it's certainly not for everyone.
Well, I will definitely be keeping in mind the coaching technique, and I would offer our listeners if it's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to Ani and I. We do have experience with coaching folks as we named. But if you appreciated this episode, we want to first thank you for joining, and you can share it with a peer or colleague. For the podcast, we do ask that you leave a review if you haven't. It helps boost our engagement. And if you'd like to reach Ani and I directly, feel free to reach out to us at the don't do that pod@gmail.com. And until next time, remember,
Don't do
don't
that.
do that.